Not every battle is worth swinging a sword. Sometimes the strongest thing you can say is nothing. Silence isn't weakness. It's strategy. And if you know when to use it, you can save your relationships, your reputation, and your peace of mind. Let's talk about the 5 situations where your best move is to keep your mouth shut. When emotions are high, our mouths move faster than our minds. You've been there, I've been there. Somebody says something that hits you right in the pride, or maybe in that soft spot you don't like to admit exists. And suddenly you're firing back without even realizing it. It feels good in the moment, doesn't it? That rush of getting the last word, making the point, defending yourself. But then about an hour later, or maybe even just 5 minutes later, you start replaying what you said and wish you could reach back in time and grab those words before they left your lips. Here's the truth. Words are like toothpaste. Once they're out, you can't shove them back in. And when we're angry, we squeeze way too hard. That's why silence in the heat of the moment is one of the smartest plays you can make. It's not about letting someone win the argument. It's about not letting your emotions hand over the microphone to the worst version of yourself. Because here's what happens when emotions run the show, logic gets pushed to the back row. Your brain is wired to protect you, but in fight or flight mode, it's terrible at protecting your relationships. The part of you that thinks about consequences goes dim, and the part of you that thinks, I'll show them, gets the spotlight. That's when we start using words as weapons, sharp enough to cut someone else, but also sharp enough to cut us right back later. Now, I know what some people are thinking. Well, if I stay silent when I'm angry, doesn't that make me weak? Not even close. You know what's actually weak? Needing to react right away because you can't control yourself. Strength isn't about volume, it's about control. And in that moment, silence is control. It's you telling yourself, I run this mouth, not my anger. Sometimes the best comeback is no comeback at all, at least not yet. Silence gives you the breathing room to decide if the thing you're about to say is actually worth saying. It's like pressing pause on a movie before you hit send on the wrong scene. And that pause, it changes everything. Because what you'll find is that 90% of those angry responses don't need to be said at all. The problem either solves itself or you realize the thing you were about to fight over didn't deserve the energy in the first place. Let me give you a quick example. Say someone at work calls you out in a meeting, maybe unfairly, maybe even in front of the whole team. Your chest tightens, your brain goes red, and you can feel a reply bubbling up. If you let that anger speak for you, you're going to say something that sounds like you're defending yourself, but really it'll sound defensive. It won't make you look strong. It'll make you look rattled. But if you breathe, stay silent, and just let them finish. 2 things happen. 1, you keep your composure. And 2, everyone else in the room gets to see you as calm, measured, and above the drama. Later, when the emotions have cooled, you can address it privately, directly, and without the adrenaline doing the talking for you. Another benefit of silence when emotions are high is that it forces the other person to carry the weight of their words. People expect a reaction. They expect you to swing back. When you don't, it creates this unexpected space where their own words echo back to them. Sometimes that alone is enough to make them realize they went too far without you having to say a single thing. And look, I'm not saying you should never express your emotions. I'm saying pick the moment. When you feel the heat rise in your chest, when your voice wants to leap out before your brain is ready, that's the moment to clamp it shut. Give yourself a cooling off period, 5 minutes, 5 hours, maybe even a full day if you need it. You'd be amazed how much perspective you gain when you let your emotions pass through before you speak. Silence in those moments isn't about hiding. It's about protecting your peace, your relationships, and your credibility. Because here's the reality: people rarely remember the details of the argument, but they will always remember how you handled yourself in it. Did you lose it or did you hold it? Silence in those heated moments will make sure you're remembered for the right reason. So the next time you feel your emotions climbing that ladder and your mouth reaching for the rung right above it, stop, step back, let the fire burn out before you add any more fuel. Sometimes the smartest thing you can say is nothing at all. When you don't have all the facts, silence is your best insurance policy. Because the moment you start talking without the full picture, you're gambling with your credibility. And credibility is one of those things. It takes years to build and seconds to lose. You might think you're just making conversation, sharing an opinion, filling the silence. But if it turns out you were wrong, suddenly you're not just wrong, you're wrong loudly. And people remember that. Here's the tricky part. Our brains don't like not knowing. There's this itch to fill in the blanks, to connect the dots ourselves. We hear part of a story and we think, okay, I know where this is going. And then we start sharing our take on it like it's gospel. But those missing details, they're like the twist at the end of a movie. If you speak too soon, you end up looking like you didn't even watch the whole thing. Think about how many arguments, misunderstandings, and even broken relationships happen because somebody reacted before they had the full truth. They heard something third hand, took it as fact, and then charged into a conversation or a text thread ready to set the record straight, except the record wasn't straight. They were working off a bootleg copy. Silence in that moment isn't avoidance. It's discipline. It's choosing to hold back until you're sure. And that doesn't just protect you from looking foolish. It protects the other person from unnecessary harm. Because once words are out there, even if you apologize later, the sting doesn't just disappear. If you've ever been on the receiving end of that kind of premature judgment, you know how it feels. Someone assumed the worst, ran with it, and by the time the truth came out, it was too late. Damage done. There's a phrase I like to use: slow is smooth, smooth is fast. The slower you are to speak without facts, the smoother your conversations will be. And in the long run, the faster you'll be able to solve problems without creating new ones. If you're always rushing to fill the silence, you're playing speed chess with your reputation, and that's a game you can lose in a single move. Now, let's be honest. Sometimes the pressure comes from outside. Someone corners you with a question. What do you think happened? Whose side are you on? They want an immediate opinion. And it feels awkward to say, I'm not sure yet. But that little sentence is one of the most powerful tools you can use. It tells people you care enough to get it right before you speak. It tells them you value truth over performance. And believe me, that earns more respect than pretending you know everything. Let's say you're at work and there's a situation, maybe a big decision that's being discussed, and people are throwing around numbers, scenarios, possible outcomes. You could jump in early, try to sound decisive, make a call right there in the moment, or you could say, let's get the rest of the information first. That's not indecision. That's leadership, because leaders don't guess, they guide. And you can't guide people to the right place if you're standing on the wrong map. Sometimes not having all the facts doesn't just mean you're missing details. It means you might be missing context. And context changes everything. A sentence said in anger means something different than the same sentence said in fear. A decision made under pressure means something different than the same decision made with time to think. If you speak before you have that context, you risk reacting to a version of reality that doesn't even exist. I can tell you from experience, the fastest way to lose trust is to speak confidently about something and then be proven wrong. The fastest way to gain trust is to be the one person in the room who isn't afraid to say, I don't know yet. That's not a weakness. That's the confidence of someone who doesn't need to perform for approval. So the next time you're tempted to fill the gap with your guess, remember, silence isn't you doing nothing. Silence is you waiting for the truth to catch up to the conversation. And when it does, you'll be able to speak from a place of strength instead of a place of speculation. Better to stay silent and be right later than to speak too soon and be wrong forever. When the other person just wants to vent, silence is more powerful than any advice you could give, because sometimes people don't need a solution. They don't even need your opinion. They just need a safe space to unload what's been building up inside of them without feeling judged, corrected, or rushed. We've all been on both sides of this. You've had days where you just needed to get it off your chest. Not a debate, not a discussion, just someone to hear you. And you've probably also been the one sitting there listening while somebody else was in that space. The problem is most of us are terrible at just listening. We think our job is to fix it. We start interrupting with, have you tried this? Or, well, here's what I would do. thinking we're being helpful when really we're robbing them of what they came to you for, which is to be heard. Here's something I've learned when someone is venting. They're not handing you a problem to solve. They're handing you a pressure valve to hold while they release the steam. If you keep twisting the valve shut with your advice, the pressure just builds. And eventually they stop coming to you because it doesn't feel safe anymore. Silence in these moments sends a message. I'm here. I'm listening. I'm not here to win. I'm not here to judge. I'm not here to hurry you along. Take your time. And that silence isn't awkward if you see it for what it really is, a container. It's giving them the room to process out loud without your ego jumping into the driver's seat. Now, don't get me wrong. There are moments where advice is needed. But here's the thing. When they're in vent mode, they're not ready to hear it yet. Think of it like pouring water into a glass that's already overflowing. Your advice just spills out because there's no space for it. The silence is what helps them empty enough to actually receive something later. One of the biggest mistakes people make in these situations is confusing venting with complaining. Complaining is a habit. Venting is a release. And often you can't tell which one it is until after they've finished. That's another reason silence works so well. You're not jumping in prematurely and labeling them as negative or dramatic. You're just giving them the space to work through whatever it is in their own time. Think about a time when you were upset and someone interrupted you with a solution 5 seconds in. Did it make you feel better? Probably not. It probably made you feel like they weren't really hearing you. They were just waiting for their turn to talk. We've all done it, and we've all been on the receiving end. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of us give advice in those moments because it makes us feel useful, not because it's actually what the other person needs. So what does silence actually look like here? It's not staring blankly, waiting for them to finish. It's active listening, nodding, showing with your body language that you're engaged, maybe offering a short, I get that, or that sounds rough, just to let them know you're still with them. But you're not hijacking the conversation with your own story or your own solutions. You're letting them steer until they've said what they need to say. And something interesting happens when you do this. Most of the time, they'll eventually stop, take a breath, and say something like, so what do you think? That's your opening. That's the moment when they're actually ready for your input. And because you waited, what you say next will carry 10 times the weight it would have if you jumped in too early. The people in your life will remember how you handled them in their moments of overwhelm. Did you let them breathe, or did you make it about you? Silence is a gift you can give without spending a dime, and yet it's one of the rarest things people offer each other. So the next time someone starts venting, resist the urge to fix it, top it, or redirect it. Just be the safe place they can let it all out, because sometimes the most helpful thing you can do is nothing at all. Not every invitation to speak is worth accepting. And sometimes a question isn't a question, it's a trap. The thing about traps is they're not always obvious. They're not just somebody asking you something they already know the answer to. A trap can be any question that's designed to pull you into a fight, bait you into overreacting, or get you to say something that can be used against you later. You've probably experienced this. Someone throws a little verbal grenade your way. So do you still think you were right about that? Or are you even capable of handling this? It's not curiosity, it's provocation. They don't actually want your thoughtful perspective. They want the reaction. And if you give them that reaction, they win twice. First, by pulling you into their game, and second, by watching you lose your cool. That's why silence is so powerful here. When you don't take the bait, you're not just avoiding the trap. You're showing that you're unshakable. And that does something interesting. It takes away their control. People who set traps feed on your need to explain yourself. The moment you stop feeling the need to explain yourself to everyone, you take away their leverage. Now, here's the challenge. Some traps are disguised as innocent questions. So what do you think about what they said about you? Sounds like a chance to clear the air. But what it really is, most of the time, is a way to stir the pot. If you answer in the heat of the moment, your words can be twisted, misquoted, or delivered without your tone and context. And now You're dealing with the fallout of something you didn't even mean the way it was heard. This is where silence becomes a strategy. You're not ignoring the person. You're refusing to be pulled into a battle you didn't choose. And that's not weakness. That's control. Anyone can take a swing when provoked. It takes real discipline to recognize the trap and step around it without getting tangled in the ropes. One thing I've noticed is that people who try to bait you often don't know what to do when you don't engage. They'll repeat the question, rephrase it, try to push harder. But if you stay calm, keep your tone neutral, or simply don't respond at all, the energy shifts. The tension they were hoping to create starts to dissolve because you're not feeding it. And the best part, you get to walk away without a single word that can be twisted or taken out of context. Sometimes the trap isn't set by someone else. It's set by the situation. A heated group conversation, a high-stakes meeting, a family gathering where you know certain topics will light a fire. The trap here is the environment, not the individual. And in these situations, staying silent can be even harder because part of you wants to set the record straight or stand your ground. But here's the thing, you can stand your ground without opening your mouth. Presence is powerful. Not engaging doesn't mean you've surrendered. It means you've chosen the higher ground. This doesn't mean you never answer tough questions. It means you pick your moment. You decide if the timing, the place, and the company are right for the truth you want to speak. And if they're not, you let the question hang in the air unanswered. That unanswered question can be more uncomfortable for the other person than anything you could have said. It's about protecting your peace, but it's also about protecting your words. Once they're out, they can be replayed, twisted, or exaggerated. But silence can't be misquoted. And that's why it's such a powerful tool when you sense someone is trying to corner you. So when the bait comes, and it will, pause. Ask yourself, if I answer this right now, who benefits? If the honest answer isn't you, then maybe the best move is no move at all. Because sometimes the smartest answer you can give is none. If your words aren't going to add value, silence is the better choice. And I don't just mean value as in sounding smart or insightful. I mean value as in making the moment better, clearer, calmer, or more productive than it was before you opened your mouth. If what you're about to say doesn't move the conversation forward in a meaningful way, then maybe it's not worth saying at all. The thing about talking just to talk is that it can feel harmless. A comment here, a quick jab there, a little side remark to lighten the mood. But words aren't weightless. They land somewhere and they stick. And when we speak without intention, we run the risk of adding noise to a moment that actually needed clarity, or worse, adding fuel to a fire that was already burning. We live in a culture where constant input is normal. People feel like they have to weigh in on everything, every conversation, every argument, every trending topic, as if staying silent somehow means you don't care or you're out of the loop. But here's the truth. Silence doesn't mean you're disengaged. It means you're disciplined enough to know that your voice carries more weight when you don't spend it carelessly. Sometimes we speak out of habit. Someone shares something and we feel this automatic pull to respond with our own version, our own story, or our own opinion. We think we're connecting, but often we're just redirecting. That's how conversations become competitions. Who has the bigger story, the stronger take, the better punchline? And in the process, the original point gets lost. Other times we speak because the silence feels uncomfortable. We throw something out just to fill the space. But not all silence is awkward. Some silence is necessary. Some silence gives people room to think, reflect, or process what was just said. When you rush to fill that space with words that don't matter, you take away that opportunity. There's also the danger of speaking without fully thinking. When you speak before your mind catches up, you often say things you don't fully mean or can't fully stand behind. And once those words are out, you can't take them back. People don't get to rewind your tone or reread your intentions. They only hear what was said and they'll judge you by it. That's why adding value isn't just about speaking the truth. It's about speaking it in the right way, at the right time, for the right reason. Here's something to think about. When you look back at the conversations you regret, how many of them would have been better if you just said less? We don't usually regret the things we didn't say. We regret the things we did say, the sarcastic comment, the unnecessary opinion, the overshare, the joke that didn't land. If you can train yourself to pause and ask, is this going to make things better or just make me feel better for a second? You'll save yourself a lot of clean up later. Choosing silence in these moments doesn't mean you're holding back who you are. It means you're curating your words so that when you do speak, people know it's worth listening. You're not just adding to the pile of sound. You're adding something that actually matters. And the beauty of this is that it builds